G'day and welcome. Okay, so I got my 25-year-old Hobbycraft Canada model kits here that just kind of going through. I'll read the description. Whoops. Now, one thing, this one here, you got the Panther on the side of it, and I love the markings on this one, but however, when I went through this, I got a bit of a surprise because I don't have that squadron. I have a different squadron in here. I'll just show you in before we get into it. They gave me LP363, which it's going to be nice. It's got that's a hawk there, I guess, a hawk or an eagle, probably a hawk. I'll have to look at what squadron it is. I can't quite read that. It's a little bit too fine for me to read. Yeah, so so I guess these are going to be a bit of a mystery package. That one was correct. That one had the right squadron, but I guess because it's all the same kit, and it's just, I guess, maybe the way the decals gets, do they put the right lid on the right decals? I'm sure there's a bit of that going on. But it would be nice if it was exactly what was advertised. But I'm not going to complain. So anyway, we'll look at the parts again. Not much to see. Not much to see. But the good news is I got a can of spray paint of aluminium. So the nice thing about that is that we've got the cockpits in there and everything. The cockpits, this one's going to be a tricky one to do. That one's going to be a really tricky one to do. Yeah, so I'll probably be able to do it. Oh, this one has the guns on it. The other one doesn't. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay, so they are slightly different kits, I guess. Maybe they're built at different times and they did add-ons or whatever. Yeah, this is the Mark 4B. So that's the Mark 4. This is the Mark 4B. Huge difference. Huge difference. Wow, there wasn't that much of a difference. There was a little bit of a difference. Anyway, so let's... I read it in the last one, but I'll read it in this one too. Designed to meet RAF requirements for an all-weather day-night fighter capable of effectively operating in the Arctic regions, the CF-100 was intended to counter the growing threat of Soviet bombers. Dun, dun, dun. In the late 40s. The prototype flew on January 19th, it doesn't say it here, but it says it on the side, 1950, and gained acceptance in 1953, dubbed the Cunuck. Its sturdy soon earned it the nickname Clunk, that I explained in the last video. What the pilots would say was when the landing gear would come down, you hear clunk, clunk, and it sounded like it would shake the whole airplane, and it sounded like the whole thing was going to rip apart on you. But it was just noisy. It was just noisy, but it was a very reliable airplane. There were a few crashes, not too many though, but there were a few crashes. Developed the Mark 1, 2, and 3, and the Mark 4B and Mark 4, and I guess the Mark 5 was the final upgraded variants. Basically, the Mark 5, they did some work on the tail so you could dive it to Mach 1. Entered operational service in 1954, and in 1956, 4 squadrons were assigned to NATO. Service in France, West Germany for its all-weather capabilities. The Clunk demonstrated its superiority over the CL-13 Sabre. It's the F-86 Sabre. The CL-13 is the Canadian variant. Frequently grounded due to foul weather, the F-86. It eventually was replaced by the CF-100 Starfighter in 1963. The Clunk was retired in December 1981 after 31 years of service. And I salute you, Mr. Cold War Horse, for such a great service. Now, this manual seems a little bit thicker than the last one. Again, they could have been manufactured. The kits were made a bit different times. I remember I got a good deal on these kits for some reason. Oh, that's right. They were selling them at the Giant Tiger. That's why, yeah, I got them for I want to say less than $10. Maybe even $5. That was 60. But I think that was just discontinued product at the time. So I don't know how old these kits really are, but what they got going on here? They got something funky going on here. Anyway, we can see this is all Canadian Squadron. The other one has Belgium Squadron and a Canadian Squadron on there. You see the Canadian Squadron on the front there. But this one here, I one of these, I'm going to put rocket pods on one CF-100, and I'm going to put drop tanks on the other CF-100. But I don't know which CF-100. Now, these drop tanks, how 1950s looking is that, right? Those big old drop tanks. Okay. Holy. That's huge. Oh, it's done the same way. Okay, yeah. So, we'll flip it over. So there's your pilots again in assembly stage 1. Assembly stage 2, we put the cockpit in there. Assembly stage 3, get our turbofans in there. Landing gear well, okay. We also got, yeah, there's no real, cockpit detail in there. It's just kind of, you plop your pilots in, and there's not even a detail for the cockpit. Again, these hobbycraft kits from back then were pretty basic. They weren't highly detailed, but they got the job done. Got the rear jet canopy, stage 6 fuel tanks, and yeah. Now on this one, you got the option between the rocket pods or the fuel tanks. I'll see if this kit is the same. What a disaster. Hang on. I see the fuel tanks. Yeah, so you could either put rocket pods or fuel tanks on this one. So that's pretty cool. Again, there's our decals. Now, most of the CF-100s that were flown in Canada, with the exception of a few, were always just bare nickel, aluminium plated stuff. For some reason they did it that way. They didn't. Which way are we going here? Oh, okay, yeah. Imagine human beings only born with 2 arms. Really? The third arm would be so helpful about now. Anyway, so we'll get this out of here. Put that instruction back in. If you see a painted CF-18, chances are it was either going to be a British one or a Belgian one that was exported. We did, I think, have one squadron where the airplanes were actually fully painted in camo, but not too many. I've only seen, I think, maybe 3. They were probably from the same squadron, I would imagine. But almost all the other ones are just like early jet age. Again, radar stealth and camouflage wasn't really a big concern in the early 50s with most jets, because it was just like, well, one of the things was, out of World War II, yes, you had all kinds of camouflage that the British worked on. We always laughed at the British in the museum. I'd be sitting there and there was like a de Havilland mosquito. And you look at the finish on the de Havilland mosquito, it's like, man, this thing would have been really on a kind of a hazy, cloudy day or a gloomy day like today, would have fit perfectly into the background over the English Channel. Nobody would see this thing coming. But then what did the Brits do? They put big round red meatballs right on the side of it to kind of make it stand out, right? Which was, like, that would stand out. I mean, but these things being silver, I mean, if there was sun on them, you would see them. That's how they spotted most of the MiG-15s in over North Korea, was just they would be glowing in the sun, right? It was like they were easy to spot that way. But then, again, back then, it was a little bit different, because it was like you didn't need it, they looked at it a little bit different. They didn't really look at it as, blinding to radar. Did painting really made that much difference to the radar detection? It didn't really make that much difference back then, although they experimented with it. But like even most of the Russian stuff, it didn't have paint on it. Well, most of the Canadian stuff was kind of the same. Like the Starfighters, same thing. There was no real paint schemes on them until probably about the late 60s when they started, getting more camouflaged on it. So that's just what it is. So we have a Mark IV and a Mark 5 here, and although they were very similar between the Mark IV and the Mark 5, there's almost no difference between the two. They were different airplanes, slightly upgraded on the Mark 5 and stuff like that. So, but anyway, I'm going to leave it at about that. So there we go.